Skill-based matchmaking is talked about whenever an FPS game is mentioned, to the point where games like X-Defiant are actually using the fact there is no SBMM in their game as a sense of advertisement, which I mentioned in my video about that game how smart of a market that is to touch upon. Today, I wanted to talk about skill-based matchmaking and try to determine if overall it is a bad system. The prevalence of the coined tumor of the gaming industry started in 2019 with Call of Duty Modern Warfare, when people started to realize, hey, these lobbies are awfully sweaty and it never seems to end. Why is every single match competitive? Why do they always go down to the wire over and over again? But for some reason, when I watch a content creator, their lobbies are like playing against bots in a private match. With the ongoing confusion in the world, Drifter, Exclusive Ace, and Sour did a study to determine how the matchmaking worked. Needless to say, they were right about how the matches were put together. It uses your previous performances to determine how your games are going to play out and the strength of your teammates and your enemies. I'm not going to delve into all the intricacies of the study, I just needed to mention it because there are some people who still seem to think SBMM does not exist. It has been proven numerous times that it does, so stop with that shit. Every single time a Call of Duty releases, skill-based matchmaking trends on Twitter. People voice their outrage of the matchmaking for multiple reasons, the worst connection being the thing for me. Every match being super competitive, less variety in perks, attachments, and weapons, and mostly everyone hates it. That confuses a lot of people because they say, why do you not want to play against people similar skill level to you? You're just complaining because you're bad at the game. And famous lines like don't like it, don't play it, which is the most NPC response I've ever heard in my dumb life. The thing I have noticed the most about skill-based matchmaking is the whole community is divided. If you're getting into an argument about the matchmaking in Call of Duty on Twitter, you could be arguing with someone who's either way better than you or way worse than you without even knowing it, since everyone's perception of being good is much different. To some people, a 1.5 KD is good, to some a 1.1 KD is good, and to others a 3.0 KD is good. So people are always bashing heads at each other, not really understanding the skill level of the player they're talking to. How is someone even going to know that anyways, because skill-based matchmaking is not taking place in a ranked environment, which is the most logical argument against the system. When you log into any game, whether it's Call of Duty, Halo, what have you, you are not consciously choosing to go into a ranked match ready to try your best. Maybe you were just a good player and wanted to smoke some crack and play your computer games, but you can't even do that in a quote-unquote quick play game because of the prevalence of skill-based matchmaking, turning people away from the games entirely in most cases. Or you can be a classic Call of Duty player and say you hate the stupid, dumbass, stupid idiot game and still buy it every single year. If you asked most people, like it or not, Call of Duty is a game that takes much less skill compared to other FPS games. The more skill-based FPS games, you are actually required to get headshots for a lot of damage, manage cooldowns, abilities, or whatever gimmick that are in that said game. In Call of Duty, once you learn how to predict spawns, proper map control, managing recoil, there isn't really much else for people to learn, especially since the more modern Call of Duty games, the best strategy is just to sit in corner and listen for footsteps. Typically, you just pick a gun that suits your playstyle more, whether it's rushing, camping, or holding down a building, then pick some perks that are very simple to choose from and you'd be good to go. If you are a 5-year-old, a 40-year-old, or a 70-year-old, you could pick this game up and have success in it to a degree. Obviously, there are mechanical skills in it that make people better than others, such as general aim or tracking, but any human being, alien, or cat could get kills in this game. Hell, you could have no idea what you're doing and go against someone who literally gets a salary to play this game, camp in a corner, shoot them in the back, and kill them instantly. If that does not prove my point, I don't know what does. If you look at games that are more competitive derived, Dota, League, Valorant, CS, Overwatch, those games require a lot more knowledge and skill to play that is typically more than just aiming. And also because you don't need aim in League or Dota, but my point still stands. We are going to use Overwatch as the example because I'm most familiar with that games out of the ones I mentioned. When you first start playing this game, there are a variety of different heroes you can choose from. You have ones who are all about aiming, ones who are more cooldown dependent, and get this, ones that you don't need to aim with, but there's still a lot involved even if they do not require aim. If we look at a hero like Cass, his pistol does that consistent hit scan damage, a mag grenade for close range targets, and a roll. First, with his gun, getting consistent headshots is your best bet to do maximum damage. Typically, you'd want to save the mag grenade for someone pressuring you, but if they do not have someone who can pressure you, then saving it to burst down a target while you're flanking or helping one of your teammates is a great idea. You'd save the roll when you are getting pressured too much or you need to reposition. You can also save it in case you get pulse bombed, since if you roll at the exact moment, you won't die if you have full health. I explained the hero bringing your ass back to school because I needed it to prove my point on things you'd have going through your mind while you're playing the hero, which is one of the more static, simple ones to play. Even the ones that don't require aim, such as Winston, sure, on paper his weapon doesn't take any skill to use, but the skill required to get a lot of value with this character makes him one of the hardest to master in the entire game. It actually takes hundreds or thousands of hours to do. The same exact thing can be said about Valorant agents or champions in League. There is so much time required for you to learn their kits to maximum effectiveness and fully understand them. and in some cases it takes a while just to understand how to play the game in general. You actually need to learn crosshair positioning, in-game mechanics, ability usage, ult timing, cooldowns, combos, positioning, ult tracking, and so much more stuff within the games. Expecting someone who's new to be able to play against a person who has a lot of experience is ridiculous. It really is. If we take a pro player at any of these games and put them in a lobby against someone who's never tried it before or barely has any time, the enjoyment would be completely stripped from the game. If you chose a character in Overwatch who in theory counters a hero, they're going to know what you try to do before you even do it, counter you, and pummel you. It doesn't matter if you're the second coming of Christ, you won't be able to win. It is not even a debatable thing. Your win chance is actually 0%. There's nothing you'd be able to try or play, you just have to give up. These games are built from the ground up to have a huge learning curve, requiring the player to spend a lot of time building these skills and understanding them. If we go back to Call of Duty, it is not designed to be competitive. I don't even think that's an argument, which is why I mentioned Bobby could kill a pro player. Honestly, you can put Timothy in the game and they would be able to pull it off, since the time to kill in Call of Duty is a few hundred milliseconds, and the headshot aim required in most games is the player's entire body, which is why you get those deaths in COD where you're not missing a single bullet and they turn around at 4 sensitivity, hipfire you, and somehow you die. I know you know what I'm talking about with that hogwash. Landing 4 to 5 bullets on someone is not hard. Listening for someone's footsteps and shooting them in the back when they come around the corner is not hard. Anyone can do it, which is where all of the emphasis goes. Anyone can. The ease of access for Call of Duty is like no other game, which is why the franchise is so popular. Anyone can pick it up and play it. For the other games I mentioned, it takes a long time to grow the skills and understand how to play. Both of the games I mentioned have skill-based matchmaking in them, but if you look out what I laid for you here, if you are completely new to Overwatch or Valorant, do you really think it would be fair to play someone who has never touched either of those games in a lobby with a Grandmaster or Radiant player? No, it wouldn't, since that player would not be able to do anything against them, period. In Call of Duty, you can be Bumcheese25 camping in the corner with a shotgun and kill Fartbox91 who jumps 1800 times when he shoots. Just pull the trigger once and he's a goner. Games that are competitive derived need skill-based matchmaking. New players need to progressively go against other players who don't understand the game so there can be some enjoyment. Some would say going against other great players would help you learn. No, it doesn't. What the fuck is Glued Wheel 32 gonna learn from someone who just out-mechanics them and wins? It has to come naturally from people around them, which is why rank gets played so much, to grind up and improve by going against other players their own skill level, because the sense of improvement is the enjoyment these games provide. When someone is sitting their ass down to play Call of Duty, they're just trying to take it slow, drink rat poison or a beer, eat, or play while a podcast is in the background or something. Most of these players are not going to take it seriously. They aren't trying to improve. There is no sense of enjoyment improving in COD, since you could do something that's objectively skillless, like camping in a building with a thermal sight, having claymores at your back, and get all your streaks and destroy a lobby. You then mix these players with others that are trying to take it seriously, and it creates this massive conflict between everyone, because there are so many people looking for different experiences thrown into the exact same pool, and it starts to become a clusterfuck. The variety in COD is what makes it fun. There are lots of choices of weapons and playstyles, but if you're a good player at COD in modern times, you will constantly play against people who use the same guns, the same attachments, and the same perks over and over again, because they aren't casuals. They know what the good stuff is, and they are aware of movement and how to play the game. If you look at lobbies from people who are objectively bad at the game, in the 0.4 to 0.5 KD range, people are using so many different weapons, perks, playstyles, and the variety comes back into the series. For casuals who actually are good at the game, it sucks because you're thrown into this world you don't want to be a part of, and it becomes very volatile and boring. When I'm playing a competitive derived game, I love that sense of progression, improving, and grinding in ranked. Back when I played Overwatch a lot, I was so stoked to hit GM for the very first time. You'd ask, why is it boring in COD? Because it's not a competitive game. As I said, there's no enjoyment in getting better. There are camo challenges to grind out, different guns to try. I shouldn't be forced to play in a really competitive environment when I barely play the game just because I can aim straight and understand my surroundings. It should be taken as more of an enjoyable, silly game to play in that sense. How am I supposed to be drugged out of my mind playing COD and have fun, while I'm here going against someone who has not stopped playing all day, about to hit hour 15 streaming to one person, which is themselves? I have had the same sentiment about skill-based matchmaking since the prevalence of it has increased. It should be in games like Overwatch because of the really large skill gap. Playing against bad players in that game is not fun. It feels bad. They are so awful and you're just decimating them over and over and over again. Plus, the enjoyment factor is learning. How am I supposed to learn to get better if I'm going against people who have no idea what they're doing? It would just be mind-numbingly easy to win every single time. In COD, you don't need to have skill-based matchmaking because anyone can succeed. You can be new and still get kills, even get streaks. There's not an insane skill gap. What you have to learn in the game is training wheels to most. It is designed for casual play. Look at CD LPL, for example, those guys are playing at the top of competition. How do they accomplish that? Restricting half of the game in some of the maps because they are not deemed competitive enough. Franchises put actual millions of dollars into this and the game is stripped down like that. What else do I need to say? It speaks for itself. Which would raise the question, why does it even exist in COD, you stupid idiot? COD takes so much skill, right? There would not be skill-based matchmaking in COD if it took no skill. Well, protecting casuals is an amazing thing when you're trying to maximize your profits. There are a lot more casual players than hardcore ones, plus these companies don't care if you're hardcore because the chances you'll stick around no matter what is pretty high. How many times have you said you hate the game you're playing, but you still play it all the time? You have genuine passion and interest in the world of the game you choose to play. Casuals don't have that same mindset. If they're constantly getting pub stomped, it will turn them away and will not return because they don't like computer games that much anyways or don't care enough about that said game. First impressions are very important to a lot of people. These companies are trying their best to mitigate pub stomping from happening. It is for that said reason alone because casuals are the people who seem to spend the most money on microtransactions, which is what these companies want. Buy. It is not a secret how big of a practice pub stomping is, at least in Call of Duty. As I mentioned in Overwatch, people do smurf obviously, but a majority of players I've talked to don't really want to go against terrible people since it's not going to help you improve, nor is it satisfying. In COD, people only really want to go against players who are worse than them. A lot of them say, oh, I missed the variety and skilled players I went before, which is a load of horseshit. Mostly everyone wants to pub stomp because the sense of superiority it gives you, dropping streaks consistently and making people rage quit. They just use that as an excuse to make their hatred towards SBMM seem less volatile. Some say adding a ranked playlist would make these players happy, but no, it doesn't. A lot of the time they can't compete against people their own skill level, nor do they want to. A lot of these people who pub stomp frequently are not as good as you really think they are. The genuine good players will stick through the bullshit of skill-based matchmaking and still perform alright, maybe not do good, but serviceable. The ones I am talking about in specific here are the ones who blame skill-based matchmaking for literally everything. Anytime they die, anytime they miss a bullet, anytime they lose, which is just ridiculous, but sadly the truth, and this is coming from an avid SBMM hater for games like Call of Duty. A lot of the people who sit there and hate skill-based matchmaking are these types of goofballs. So it's not really a question why it exists in Call of Duty. Money. Shocking, I know. My final verdict on skill-based matchmaking is that in practice, the system is a good idea. When it's implemented in a game where there's a really large skill gap, there's so much to learn, there's things to understand before you play, it makes sense to help those players out. Giving them room to get used to many mechanics the game might have and understand how their character even works or what they're supposed to do. But if you look at COD and other games out there that are easy access, anyone can pick it up and play, or most importantly, it is designed as a casual experience, I don't think it's warranted to be so strict. There is enough legroom from the get-go no matter who you play against since everyone is easily killable. If they get their streaks, every game has a default LMG class where you can just blow it up in under 2 seconds. There is not much to learn, nor does the player base even want to learn anything. They just want to play it casually. So yes, I would say it's a good system generally speaking and implemented in games that actually need it. It is just being used in a lot of games that don't need it to protect casuals and maximize profits, which is why so many people hate it. Elmo's question of the day is, do you think skill-based matchmaking belongs in Call of Duty? Why or why not?